Are we live?
Are we?
Yep.
That fast? I didn't show up on my stuff yet.
Yes.
All right. Well, it haven't even shown up for me yet.
Yep.
Yep, there it goes. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I'm echoing. Well, it haven't even shown up for me yet.
Yep.
Yep, there it goes. Okay. All right. Okay. I don't think I'm echoing. Well, it haven't even shown up for me yet. Yep.
It opens up your YouTube. You probably have to.
That's what it is. Yep. Just shut it down right now. All right.
I know y'all watching and you like, what's going on? This
I
real
know.
life. So
It's
just hold
crazy
on.
because it automatically opens up your YouTube, and then you think you're looking at what you're looking at, and you're like, wait a second, where's the echo coming from? Okay. Peace. What is up, y'all? What is up? What is up? So we're getting ready to talk about some toxic femininity, and we already know this is a hot button issue, and so we welcome all of y'all coming in and wanting to know what is toxic femininity, because we're oftentimes talking about toxic masculinity, and I think that and I want to acknowledge this, and then I'm gonna do all of our plugs, but I want to acknowledge in this conversation. I just want to start off as people are coming on in to acknowledge inside of this conversation that we get that toxic masculinity exists, right? So toxic femininity is not in a conversation against what's happening in the fact that we by and large live in a patriarchal society, and we have to counter what that looks like, right? But in that countering, I think it's very important that we, in particular, we as women, address some of the toxic bullshit that we do, and how it also contributes to, not only does it contribute to toxic masculinity, but it also contributes to a narrative that gets played over and over in our communities, several narratives, and we want to begin shifting that, right? So if we're going to look at how we begin to create a community in a world that really values women, we as women have to value our role in that process, and not make this a dog on the men type of situation, but really make this a situation where women can acknowledge their excellence and acknowledge who we are and the power that we have, and walk in that and not abuse that. So that's kind of my opening plug. So what's up, y'all? It's your girl Jice Johnson with the Black Business Initiative, and I got my girl Mechee X on here with me today, and we're going to talk about toxic femininity. So I want to give you all of our plugs real quick. Make sure that you go and text BlackAgenda to 484848. Tickets are on sale everywhere, you guys. So go ahead and make sure that you get your ticket. And then I have some questions. If you have already emailed me, you are on my list to email back today. So I will respond. But we've had a couple of questions in particular about Brooklyn and about DC. So I just want to make sure that we put that out there. We have emailed everyone. So if you have not received an email, if you have already purchased a ticket to Brooklyn or DC, yes, the dates have changed. So it's not two dates, the dates have changed, and we emailed everyone. So if you did not receive your email, make sure that you go over to info@bbiprofessional.com and email me, so that I can make sure I respond back to you, because we have gotten people who have responded. So we do know the email went out. We do know that some people have gotten them. We do know that they have responded. And then we have had a few people who said, hey, I never received one. So we just want to put that out there. That if you did not receive an email, go ahead and email me, because maybe we're going to the spam folder, or maybe it just went by you, you didn't see it. But nevertheless, we want to make sure that we've communicated with everyone who has purchased a ticket already. So there's that part. Also, make sure you go and buy your tickets at theblackAgendaontour.com. And then for me, I want to make sure that I let you know that I have 2 more slots open for coaching. So if you are interested in coaching with me, you can definitely hit me up. And also you can connect with me at Patreon at Grind with Jice. So I think that is everything. Thank you, Sean.
You reading the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, your skin tone is popping.
Right. I appreciate that. All right. So, Mechee, did I miss any plugs? You got them? Anything you need to plug in here?
I think that's it. That's if it ain't, that's a lot of plugs, huh? I don't think so. Look, don't worry, we got some more for the show opener.
All right. So we're gonna jump into this topic, y'all. And some of these things are kind of like near and dear to my heart, right? And unless you got somewhere else you want to start, Mechee, like I kind of want to talk a little bit about mothers and children, like motherhood, toxic motherhood.
Yes.
And I think this is important because, obviously both of us are mothers. And, in addition to that, we are mothers of not only young ladies, but we are also mothers of young men. And we know that parenting young men, young women, require a couple of different things. We homeschool our kids, we're very vested, right? We up in there. We're looking at building wealth, all these things, right? And so certainly not that we profess to be doing it perfectly, but just know that we're two mothers, who are very vested in the success of our children and the success of our families. And so, the first place that I wanted to start with this conversation is around women who use their children as pawns against their fathers. So, y'all.
Yeah. See, nobody wants to talk about that. Look. Look, you want to start? You want me to start? Look. Let's talk about moms for a minute, right? Everybody talks about the father who's not there, but we don't seem to talk about the fact of the toxic mother who is there, that can be just as damaging, right? So we do have fathers that aren't there for their kids, but let's talk about the other side of that, right? That there are mothers who will not let their children be with the father if it's not about money, or if you have another girlfriend and somehow I'm jealous. And in the end, your child is suffering for that, right? Because yes, it takes money to put a roof over a kid's head, but that money will never replace that father giving that daughter the love of a man, right? That's supposed to be her first example of how a man should treat her, nor teaching her son how to be a man, because it's not something that a woman can do, right? And so that is very much toxic behavior that trickles down to your children and affects their lives, while you steady playing this selfish game of, I'm mad what you did to me, I'm mad how you treated me, I'm mad that you with that girl and you're not with me. And the bottom line is that it's really not about you. I think that's the crazier thing, is that no matter how much you can't stand daddy, and even if you like, I don't even know why I had a baby by this Negro, I ain't know him but for 3 days, it was a one night stand. Let me tell you the difference with you and those kids, right? The difference is that no matter what, that's their father. So see, the love that they have for their father, if you let them, has nothing to do with the relationship that y'all had. And we miss that a lot of times, and we don't really talk about that, right? It's all the deadbeat dads. Well, it's some deadbeat mamas, and you ain't deadbeat because you're not in the home. It's because you are over there using your child as a pawn, and that's some toxic shit, right?
Right. So I have some like personal situations with this, right? And it's interesting because I try not to get caught up in a lot of conversations around like the child support and the this and the that, but like let me just kind of delve in a little bit about how, in particular for me, how I became a mother who was like dead set on this never being the case for me. So my family has kind of got a convoluted little situation going on, and so my father has three children by this woman named Linda, and then 3 children by my mom, and they're kind of intertwined. So he had my brother by Linda, he had my sister by my mom, then he went and had 2 other kids by Linda, then he married my mom and had me and my brother, right? So Linda's been a little bit upset for a long time, needless to say. Needless to say. And so actually for a long time, so mind you, there's about an 8-year gap in between me and my sister. And so for a long time, I didn't even know that I had siblings, right? I didn't know that I had siblings from someone else. So I grew up with my sister and then my younger brother, and I never even knew that I had other siblings until I was almost a teenager. And I remember the conversation because I was like literally coming to my parents like, I wish I had a big brother. I had some friends in the neighborhood, they had big brothers. And so my parents were kind of looking at each other and
like, little do you know.
Well, let's have this conversation. So basically, the way that it was told to me, and just to be, just to put this on the record, my father to this day has like never badmouthed Linda, right? Never, not even to me. And I'm not Linda's child. Okay. But my father has never badmouthed Linda. But ultimately what he said was, well, you do have some siblings. And so, this was like a whole conversation because I'm like, what do you mean? Right. And I went through a period of being very upset with my dad because I felt like he should have fought for, seeing his children or being around his children more. And so as the story kind of played out, and not that I profess to know all the details, but the kind of overview of this story as it played out is basically when my father decided to get married, or even before he decided to get married, my father had my sister with my mom. Like Linda basically just lost her shit. And so here she goes. Like my father would send stuff over. Linda would cut up stuff that he sent, send it back, right? If my father was going to pick up his son, Linda would have a fit. Well, you can't pick her up if you're going to have that bitch child with you, right? So that, it was like, my brother essentially could not play with my sister because that offended Linda. And so, not that I'm giving my father a pass, because obviously he still went back a couple more times to Linda and had 2 more kids with Linda. So I'm not giving him a pass in that aspect. But what I will say is that those children from my father's side, from Linda's side, pretty much believe my dad ain't shit. And really what it is Linda ain't shit. Like Linda is the one who has said, you can't see your father. If he comes over, she gives him a hard time. She has sent back stuff that he's, sent over. He's not invited to anything dealing with the kids, right? None of that. And all this really is predicated off the fact that she cannot get over the fact that he decided to marry my mother and move on. And so, it's been a interesting scenario, because now, even as adults, I have a sister who don't even want to talk to me. She don't want to know me, don't want to talk to me, doesn't want to know anything about us. And all of this is because basically she doesn't think highly of my father, right? Or she doesn't think highly of like our family, right? And so she doesn't have a strong sense of identity around what has happened inside of our family. So Linda is a person I use as an example of what it looks like to live a miserable ass, bitter life, right? Because she's been mad for years and years and years around the fact that my father didn't marry her. And it's not that she doesn't have happy days, but even then, and I was already at that time, like I said, heading into my teenage years, I spoke to Linda one day. And so I'm on the phone with Linda trying to talk to my brother. And Linda is telling me, well, you go tell your mom, that your dad is over here. He's fucking me.
To a child.
I'm a child. And I'm looking outside and my dad is in the backyard working in our backyard. And I'm like so confused. I'm like, wait, what do you mean my dad is there? She's like, you go tell your mom your dad is over here.
See, but you saying that leads me into another form of toxic femininity. Can we talk about the side chick?
Okay.
Like we talked about this. We talked about Ayesha Curry, right? So you got a woman who's mad because your dad's kind of back and forth between 2 women, and she thought if I had babies, or if I cooked enough, or loved him enough, or sexed him better than over here, then he would stay with me. And then when he doesn't, so how many women run around and have a baby when you don't give a fuck about that baby? You just thought that baby was a keeper of the man, and then when the man didn't stay, you stuck with a baby, and now you mad at him. And every time you see that baby, you want to say shit like, you act just like your motherfucking daddy, or your daddy get on my nerves. Like, that's toxic behavior too. The reason why nobody is showing Ayesha Curry that kind of attention around her husband is because women in toxic femininity will disrespect the fuck out of somebody else's relationship. Like, somehow we think we've conquered something if we get to take your man, or it's 2 of us fighting, and guess what, in the end he chose me and I won. Like, it's a real low place to be if your validation is in the fact that he chose me over her. Like, if you ain't just chose me because I'm the choice, then what the fuck makes you happy about that? So I think far too many women leading into this debate of, back and forth, and kids get caught in the middle. Like, women, stop chasing after men that are already taken, because at the end of the day, if you think he's a good man and he's a good catch to marry, or he has children and he steps outside of his relationship with you, at that point, he's no longer that good loving man, because he just stepped outside of his relationship and is fucking up his family so that he can be with you. So therefore, that doesn't make him that great man anymore. So to me, that's toxic femininity too, because we do this shit and we think that if we have a baby, the baby gonna make the man stay, he gonna choose me over her. And when he doesn't, who pays for it? The children do. Right? Side chick shit is not cute. Like, just get into a polygamous relationship and all y'all be with the same man if that's what you want to do. But all this, I'll take your man, and then calling like how she did you, tell your mom your dad is over here fucking me, talking to a kid like that. You know how many chicks will call up and tell somebody, girlfriend, that's why he over here fucking with me, and he's not, he's at work. But you see how we play these little games, and in the end, when people have children, what you're really doing is tearing down a family that ultimately hurts those kids. So Got that side chick shit. It ain't cute.
I'm recounting this story from a child. I'm 35 years old. Like I was 11 or 12. I want to say I was like 12 years old, you know, when this happened. And it has always stuck with me that she did these things, you know what I mean? Like I had to wrestle with that. And it was as I became older, I was able to put some things in perspective. But at that time as a child, I was a little bit confused. And there were other things that took place that I later on found out why we did certain things, like why we had changed our phone number a couple of times, because she used to call over and over and over again, and harass my mom and you know, kind of harass my dad, but really her anger was like towards my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that my dad told me was, you know, my dad has, you know, admitted to the fact that there were definitely times in his life that he needed to grow up, right? That was kind of one of those times. And when I asked him, well, what made you choose, you know, my mom over Linda? At this point, you had, you know, multiple kids with Linda. You had one child with my mom. What made you go with my mom? And it's funny that you even mentioned Ayesha Curry, because kind of the wholesomeness that we all know of Ayesha Curry to have, that was the reason why he chose my mom, right? It was because even though at that time he wasn't with her, he was, you know, still kind of playing the field and just kind of doing his thing. What he could acknowledge was when he was with my mom, she was peaceful. She wasn't, you know, jumping down his throat and trying to compete with the next woman for him. And, you know, some of these things, right? And so the marriage isn't perfect. They're not perfect people. But what I will say is that I have a wonderful example of what it looks like to fight for a relationship, because once he did make that commitment, my parents have been married for headed towards 40 years now, right? So it's been something that has been really great to see, but not without a lot of lessons. And so I'm fortunate enough to be able to benefit from some of those lessons. But that was one of the things. And so mentioning Ayesha Curry and just thinking about how we try to go after a man, men really don't like that. They
right.
don't like tearing down another.
Right. And see, we're going to get into that topic a little bit down the road, but it kind of leads into it, right? So, you know, a lot of women go out there and they have this projection that like, if you can, I'm gonna be nice because it's Jice show, right? But if you can get me in the bedroom, right? You're gonna be nice at BBI Professional. We professional over here. At Mechee's, you get the what it is and not the professional face over here. So, you know, women think that sex sells everything. But you know what? A man don't really care about how fat it is and how well you can perform these tricks in the bedroom, because at the end of the day, you're right. You can be as fine as you want and you can have the best body in the world. But if all you're projecting is, I bring coochie to the table, I bring sex to the table, real men don't want to settle down with that. A man wants somebody that he can come home to that's his peace, right? That is working with him in a partnership in life, that can cook a damn meal this day and age. 2019, don't nobody fucking cook. Now, I don't know if that's toxic femininity, but I think it kind of should be. How the fuck you have babies and you don't know how to feed the babies you have? Fuck cooking for a man. You don't know how to cook for your damn children, to cook for yourself. But men don't want that. They want, a woman is supposed to make a house a home. And the fact that society thinks that women aren't supposed to do that anymore because we got these gender roles going everywhere, to me, that's some bullshit. So y'all can keep playing this, I'm sexy if I want, but your sexy gonna fade, them ass cheeks gonna sag, and so is them titties one day, you know? And so at the end of the day, you can think that that's what a real man wants, but when you've been around him all this time, y'all been having all this sex, y'all don't produce babies because sex produce babies, but he go choose the other woman. Maybe it's because you weren't projecting womanhood. You were projecting all this sexuality, all this surface shit that, like you said, in the long run is not going to make a marriage or a life partnership last for 40 years. Because when the shit get tough and you got to really make it work, that's about loving each other when you don't even like each other. That's about loving each other when you getting old and your body don't look the same. And maybe you ain't as young as you used to be. But the bottom line is that we have something more deeper than surface shit. And this is why we can last. I don't care what you say, men run around being hoes all they want, and we can say it's unfair and it's not right. But when a man is ready to settle down, he don't want no hoe. He don't want no girl that can turn tricks in the bed. Now he do, but if that's all you can do, but you can't be a mother to your children. You can't be a piece to your man. You can't be a partner to him. You don't know how to make your house a home. They don't want that shit. And then you wonder why he left you with 3 kids, because your ass was good, but your womanly skills was fucked up. And that's just the truth.
Right. And it's a lot about attitude too. And I think there's something to, again, with the gender role situation, there's this idea that you can't, kind of work on who you are. Right. And I'm wondering about that because, so if you meet somebody like me, I run my own business, I run the show, I got stuff going on for me. I'm homeschooling my kids, I'm doing all these things. Right. And so we tend to think like there's this type A personality, and type A personality means that you don't recognize a softness to you, or you don't recognize what you can bring to the table in a feminine kind of manner. And first of all, that's not accurate at all. But I think there is something in this gender role, what am I trying to say? Like in this gender role situation that has women feeling like they don't need to check themselves, check their attitude, check their behavior in any way, because, if a man, lets you know that he's not feeling your attitude, he don't like how you're coming at him, he doesn't like how you're presenting yourself, then that's toxic masculinity, right? And I don't think that's toxic masculinity. I can only speak for me. I don't think that's toxic masculinity. I think that that's two people who have to learn how to occupy a space together and be in a relationship together and figure out how their roles work. And that when a man is telling you like, yo, why don't you calm it down a little bit? Why don't you be a little softer? Why don't you be a little bit more feminine? Really saying like, I don't want you trying to match me, right? Let's figure out where that balance is. And we think that is toxic. Now, if you feel like that and you don't think that's the man for you, I think that's one thing, right? But in and of itself, a man saying that this is a little bit too much, or soften yourself a little bit, and us fighting against that, I think that these gender role conversations have kind of got us a little bit messed up in that.
Yeah. I agree. There's nothing wrong with a woman being feminine, right? That's a certain energy that comes with being a woman. Now, it's all right. Now, I mean, as a woman, we can be all things. That's true. That's what the feminists be preaching, but I ain't no feminist, right? But at the end of the day, like you work very hard, and you are, some people may see you, they definitely see me a lot, right, in this community, and where we're seeing it's like, oh, they a bit tough and they think we're rugged. The funny thing though, is that I know when I need to be rough and rugged, right? But when I get around a man, especially my man, that's when I allow him to be masculine. And I enjoy beginning to get into my feminine energy. I get into my masculine energy when I have to face the world and I don't have that partner there with me. But if you have a masculine energy, which is the man who is willing to bring that to the table, there's nothing wrong, women, with being feminine. It's okay. You can bake a motherfucking cake. It's all right. You can wear an apron sometimes. Nobody said you got to stay in the kitchen with an apron on, but you can wear a motherfucking apron. It's okay, right? You can cook a meal. You can make your man's plate, right? Now, if you don't make his plate, if he act like he mad at you, now that might be an issue. But there's nothing wrong with catering to one another. There's nothing wrong. I mean, we bear the children. What the hell? You can't walk around for 9 months trying to pick up shit and be the masculine person and fighting people. Sit the fuck back and let your man handle that. And you're right. I mean, when men bring to the table, when we talk about the energy that they bring into a relationship or into the home, it's like the difference of a woman that says to the children, that's a nurturing feminine energy. Not that men can't nurture, but they do it in a different way. And the mom will say, or the woman in the house, look, I told y'all to stop. Now I done told y'all again. I done told y'all again. Then the voice get higher. How many times I got to tell y'all? What does the masculine energy come in and do? The masculine energy walks in the room and say, what did your mother tell you to do? And guess what? Everybody just gets in line. There's a reason that happens. It's called the masculine energy in the home, to be the disciplinarian. And so our homes are falling apart because women think we don't need any men in our lives and we can be everything. No, the fuck you can. It's okay to be a girl, but we only want to be a girl when we've done some foul shit. And now we want to cry and be like, but wait a minute, I'm a girl. Give me a softer sentence. Don't send me to jail that long, but I make mistakes. Give me a break. I'm a girl. See, that's when we want to come with that feminine shit. But you don't want to be feminine before we get to that point. We have to stop that.
Right. And it's a lot of that double standard, it's a lot of that double standard place. But I want to circle back around real quick because and it's crazy how many different tendencies that we have that can, push us in these different directions, because just that quick, we left how these moms use their children as pawns, right? And so for both of us, like, you're a woman who's divorced, right?
Right.
So you know, has there ever been a time for you that you felt like you needed to then withhold your children from their father, you know, and use them in that manner?
No, you see, and see, this is the thing. I think that in answering this question, I can even answer another question in the chat, because Rita, I'm going to assume you're a woman, Rita, says, is this 1950? And I would laugh, because I want you to look at the men's comments. The men are agreeing with what we're saying. So you can fight against it if you want, but if your ultimate goal is to end up in a family with the opposite sex and have a man, you should probably think about what men actually want you to bring to the table. There's nothing wrong with that. That's called being in a relationship and understanding what it takes to bring two parts to the table and contribute what you bring, right? So no, we're not in 1950, but what we're talking about and what it comes back to, if you can't be the woman in your household that you need to be and bring to the table what the man can't bring, that means there's something missing in your household. And ultimately, Rita, it trickles back down to your children. So to get back to the answer of that, I have never at any moment kept my children from their dad or ever played that game. We were partners in life, and guess what? When we divorced, what happened is we became partners as parents. So now we are friends because we are in the business of raising our children, okay? And so with that said, he has had several girlfriends since our divorce, and I've never had a problem with any of his girlfriends unless they have mistreated my children. And then me and him have a discussion about, you need to deal with your girl, or either I'm going to deal with your girl. But I talk to him first because we are the partners in all of this, right? And so as long as the woman he is with is loving on my children, taking care of them, I'm not mad that they cook dinner. Shit, while you at it and you bring them home, could you send me a plate too? Like, we all have to learn to raise our children together. So if they're going to be the woman in his life, that means they got another mom. So I just need to make sure you love my kids properly, but I'm not mad that they have another mother or someone that's going to love on them or treat them a certain way. I appreciate, and I don't understand the mothers who do this, because and I understand if the father's not there, we're not talking about deadbeat dads, but I very much appreciate having someone that I can call and say, look, your son, he acting up right now, and I'm not dealing with this no more. Can you come get him, right? And I get a bag packed and I give him all this shit to get him ready for the week. And I'm like, your father's on the way, so get yourself together. I'm glad about that, right? I'm glad that if I need to go out of town, we're doing these tours, I can call up their father and say, look, I need you to come stay with these kids. I need them to come over to your place. And that's another thing that I do, women, when he come get them, even though that's their daddy, I give him like $300 if he keeping them for the week, because they greedy as hell. And that means I don't have to feed them this week. Like, whoever has the kid, we have no child support order. We did not go to court and do all of that. He takes care of his children, and we look out for one another. If their father calls me tomorrow and says, yo, I got a flat tire, I need to get a new one to make it to work the rest of the week, can I borrow $50? I'm gonna give him that $50 because he needs to get to work. And if he ain't working, then he ain't got a place and a roof over his head. He ain't got no money in his pocket, which means he's not as good of a father capably economically of taking care of his children. So even though we're together, his flat tire is still very much my motherfucking issue, because it all comes back to what happens to our children. Enough of us don't think like that. So I'm not concerned about his personal life as long as it doesn't affect our children in a negative manner. And even then, we're going to have a conversation. We're not going to have an argument. We're not going to be fighting, and we're not going to go through all that bullshit. I'm not busting car windows. I'm not flattening tires. I'm not doing any of that.
Right. And so there's a couple points, because I'm gonna make a few points first, and then I'm gonna let Rita, stay to her own opinion. But she said, always be your authentic self. And I don't think, first of all, we have to recognize that we're always in a place of growing and becoming, and maturing, or we should be. And so, being your authentic self, sometimes you have to check whether or not you have toxicity in you, despite whatever, right? If someone is telling you like, yo, you're a little bit, over the top, right? That might be something for you to acknowledge or think about for yourself, especially if you get the same message over and over and over and over and over again, right? Now, if you absolutely just love yourself the way that you are and you don't feel like you need to change, that's cool. But most of the time, that's called a fixed mindset. And really, most of us need to be able to adopt a growth mindset and have the foresight to look internally and ask ourselves where we can grow and get better. So I don't think it's as much as you not being yourself, more so than it is acknowledging whether or not what somebody says is valid. There's a book that's out there called Thanks for the Feedback, right? And ultimately, it's not about whether you decide to take someone's advice or not, but it's about acknowledging that someone gave you feedback about who you are, what you've done, or the way that you show up in the world. And you might want to take a moment to actually think about what they're saying. There may be some truth there. There may be things that you need to adjust and change about yourself. You're not going to be perfect. No one ever is, but you can definitely work on being a person that you envision yourself to be, right? So I think it's, it's less about not being authentically you, and it's about working on being the person who you want to be, and recognizing that sometimes that may mean you have some toxic habits or some things that you do that maybe you shouldn't do or that you could work on.
I think that's ridiculous though, Jice, because in life, don't we have to adjust? Like when you become a mother, you can't say, I'm gonna authentically be myself. Like if you was in the streets and you was fast and you was a hoe, you probably shouldn't authentically be a hoe anymore. I'm just saying, right? If you get into a relationship and you go from being single to being in a relationship, or more importantly, let's even forget the relationship. You go from being a girlfriend to being a wife. Being a wife means that you have stepped into a different role. So therefore, you're not in the same role you were in yesterday. If you weren't a mother yesterday or you weren't a wife yesterday, now that you are those things, there's some things that come with that role that you should begin to work on and embrace. And that's still, you can still authentically be yourself. But if you're not willing to budge or move anywhere in this world, you're going to be a horrible friend, a horrible mate, and a horrible mother. And that's not to you personally, Sister Rita. I'm just saying as individuals, we all have to change and grow in whatever capacity life hands us, and I think that, like Whitney Houston said, you got to be every woman, be whatever you need to be whenever you need to be it. But no, sometimes you do need to be selfless and not be worrying about your authenticity to take care of your children or to do something for your household or to sacrifice for the bigger picture of your family, right? It can't always be about you. So if you're so stuck on your authenticity, you can't move or maneuver, you're going to be a hard person to have any kind of a relationship with.
Right. And then, so there was something else that you mentioned, Mechee, about like deadbeat dads, right? And of course, we're not talking about deadbeats, and there are some real ass deadbeats out there. So we're not talking about it. There are also, there are also men who want to show up for their children in the way that works best for them. And I think sometimes this is difficult for us to understand. And I'm gonna give a couple of scenarios, right? So I have a friend, a close friend of mine. She actually, they had 2 children together. They broke up. She was very upset about the breakup. And so for a while, she actually was living out here with me for a while. And I remember us just having to talk to this conversation because there was a couple of pieces, right? One is that every time her kids got on the phone with their dad, she wanted to be on the phone there as well to hear the whole conversation, right? And I was like, cut it out, sis. I love you.
Right.
Stop that. Because your kids are old enough to have a conversation with their dad, and you got to let them build and grow that relationship for themselves, right? So this was a process for her. So she had to start backing herself up. She did not like it, right? Then it was like, well, I don't like the way that he, that he does this and he does that. She didn't like the way he was talking, or, she felt like he should do things a certain way. Well, he doesn't send them what I want him to send them. He doesn't do the things the way I want him to do it. And I had to also have that conversation with her. And I'm saying I had to have these conversations because from one woman to another, I had to say, yo, sis, you got to check yourself a little bit. Back up and let those babies deal with their father. Give him the space to be a father the way that he shows up in this world. He's being a father the best way that he knows how. And so I'm not saying that means that they're always doing it right, but even as mothers, we're not always doing it right. Right. So it's like we have to allow for men to be who they are for their children in the way that they show up. And so the end of this now today, and it took some time for them to work through this, but I'm so glad that they did, because now he's in another relationship. He has 2 other children out of this relationship. Do you know they all can come together and have like one big happy family go lucky thing? I mean, they're there supporting all 4 of them kids. They're there making sure all 3 of them, right? So she's not in another relationship, but all 3 of them are able to come in and support those children. Those children have double, triple, backup for every recital, every award show. Those kids have all the clothes they need, all the toys they need. They go on outings. They have 2 moms basically, and now those moms have enabled the dad to really come in and be the father he needs to be for all of his children, right? And so I think that takes some time, oftentimes when a relationship hurts, because she was not over the relationship. She wanted that relationship to work, but she had to start working on putting her feelings aside so that the children could have what they need. And now as that process has healed, it's become this very beautiful blended, you know, family type of situation. And so she's dating and she's kind of doing her own thing as well, but the children are wonderfully supported, right? So I think that's really important when we look at that deadbeat type of situation, because sometimes we are pushing these men to look like and be the deadbeats that they're not really, and we push our agenda on them in the way we want them to show up. And if they don't show up, we accuse them of being a deadbeat.
Right. Because they don't do what we want them to do. Mom's got to stop that too, because the child is your child. That man is not your child. Stop trying to tell him how to be a dad, because you said something I think is really important, is that as mothers, we make mistakes too. See, children don't come with handbooks. And I will be the first to tell you of a woman that has, and I'm probably not the first to tell you, but let me tell you, right, that I have 5 children. And I will tell you that my first child I had at 16 years old. I didn't have another child for 7 years, right? Because I was like, no, this is not for me. I got to get it together, right? You can't be having a bunch of kids. And it was hard to raise him. You know, I had my mother's help and things like that. But I will tell you that my first child and even my second child, that as I had more children, especially in an environment where I was married and I had a household and I had a family, that I would tell you there are things that with my first child, I just wasn't aware that, you know, and I would say that I raised my other kids a little different because I have learned. And so children do not come with like manual books, like you don't know when shit's gonna happen. Like you think you got it until you go
every parent
stage. Like I didn't know what it was like to deal with a teenager until I got one, and I was like, ooh, could you go back to diapers? I thought I didn't want to change diapers. And so you learn as you get into these different phases, but the fathers do the same thing. Sometimes they mess up. Maybe they do a mistake or two. Like we all make mistakes as parents. We have to also learn to humble ourselves and apologize to your children when you're wrong. How do you think that they admit to their faults and apologize when they're wrong if you don't do the same thing? Because we're not always right. Sometimes we fuck up and we owe our children an apology. But if you can't even apologize to your kids, I know you ain't gonna apologize to the man you've been in a relationship with. But give the fathers a little room to breathe, because some of these men, it's their first baby. It's first time they've ever been a father as well. So sometimes they make mistakes, but you don't get to just dismiss yours like, oh, well, I'm the mom and, you know, dad's got to be perfect like that. That's not fair, right? That's that toxic femininity as well. Neither one of y'all perfect. So why don't y'all just learn together and do what's best for y'all children?
Right. And I'll say this is the last piece on this, and then I don't know if you have anything to because Larry asked what about the stepfathers and their role, and I don't know, we kind of talked about the women today, Larry, so maybe we gotta talk about that. Maybe we gotta talk about that in another topic.
Well, I think that the stepfather's role is the same as the stepmother's. I mean, we're speaking of stepmothers because women tend to get upset about the new woman in the man's life. But at the same time, that woman should be able to have another man, and those children look up and be able to say, well, shit, I got 2 fathers, right? And both dads be able to support, and both men, and, you know, that they can deal with each other and it not be an issue either. I mean, I just think that works both ways. It should.
Right. Yeah. And so the last thing I'll say about this too is I think we also have to allow as women for ourselves to not let what happens with these men, whether they're deadbeats or whether they're not, that we cannot let that be something that allows us to be bitter. And so I have 3 babies. My oldest daughter is by a different man. And so, you know, just really, first of all, with me, I did have that example of Linda. I have never forgotten Linda. I have never, ever in my whole life wanted to be bitter like Linda. Ever. So when I was 2 months pregnant, my daughter's father, he decided he was leaving, right? All of a sudden it was too much. He was out of here, and that was that. And so it was a difficult pregnancy for me because my daughter was not an accident, right? My daughter was actually a planned conversation, and we were not married, but we had an entire conversation about having kids. So I was very hurt when this man decided he was getting ready to walk away. Because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you could have walked away before we got pregnant. Like, what are you doing now? Right. So I felt like now I'm in this situation that I did not ask to be in. And it took a lot out of me for me to not operate inside of that bitterness. Right. And so then as he moved on and he got, married, now I ain't never liked that woman. And I did not like that woman because she was one of those toxic women, right? So in my particular situation, here comes this woman, and because she had always felt insecure about the situation that we have this child together, here you have a woman who does not want the father to take care of his child. So my daughter's father actually stayed away from her because his wife did not want him to deal with my child. Like, One, that's crazy for a woman to not want a woman and a mother on top of that, right? Because she ended up having 3 kids with him. So like, you're a mother and you're a woman, and you think that the father should not deal with his other child because you are concerned about the father and the relationship with the mother, which is just a whole crazy situation in and of itself. Right?
But if he can do that to that child, I don't understand why as women, we tend to overlook what men do to another woman or another child or another family that they had before us and think that somehow that doesn't equate to us. Because if he can walk away from that child, fool, he can walk away from your children. If he can mistreat her and whoop her ass, he can whoop your ass too. So I don't understand how we overlook things when they do it to other women and make us feel better, like, oh, because he did it to her and not to me. If he's doing it to anybody, it's in his capability to do it to anybody. So to me, that's just stupid. You're not a good father because you're loving on our kids if you're dismissing the other children you have. You're not a good father. And at any moment, if the tides turn, you could be a shitty father to our kids. Why don't we ever see that? Like the side chick be like, oh, I want the man, but he was cheating with you on her. So you don't think he might not get with you and find him another side chick? Then when you find yourself in that position, you like, why you cheating on me? Bitch, I met you. Cheating.
Right, that part. But wait, it gets deeper, right? Because so that's one situation, because that's a whole nother level. If you are a woman and you are so concerned about that man going back and being in the presence of his ex in order for him to take care of his kids, you need to check yourself, because that means that you don't trust him, and then that means that your relationship is not stable anyway, right? So that's a whole other situation. But let's compound that to say that he did not know. My daughter is I guess I'll put my daughter's 13 years old. So my daughter just last year met her father for the first time last year, right? So she's gone 12 years. I've been a single mother now. I have said from the beginning, from adult to adult, I will say that ain't shit, right? I've said that for a long time. What I don't do is I don't tell my daughter that your father ain't shit. So when my daughter had the opportunity to meet her father, I was very clear with her, I'm not a fan of this man, but you go and ask him all the questions that you want to ask him. So she had not been poisoned for all that time. For 12 years, my daughter has not been poisoned with my personal view on who that man is. He has, by and large, been a deadbeat. He is not willingly paid child support. He actually at one point blocked my information because he did not want to. We actually went for 4 years without having any agreement. We decided when he decided he wasn't paying anymore, I said, okay, well, fine. So I go and I get a child support order. So at that point, you know, he's basically had wages garnished ever since then. And so, you know, as far as I'm concerned, like, you're not willingly being a participant in parenting this child with me. You don't call her, you don't send her nothing, you don't know her, she don't know you, right? But I did not poison her mind around who he was. So now, through whatever circumstances, after all these years, he said, well, I need to get to know my child. I'm not standing in the way of you getting to know your child, homie. Here she is. She ain't grown, but she's grown enough for you to.
Almost. He done missed a lot of years. She gonna be big in a few.
Right. So even in just this short time over the last several months, they have been developing a relationship all on their own, because I refuse to be bitter about the situation. And then 2, I've allowed them to have what they have. And because I never poisoned her mind about who he was, that meant she got to go in and get to learn and know him for who he is. So if he's the same shitty ass person that he was when I met him, then she'll get that disappointment on her own. I will be there to pick up those pieces. If he's learned his lesson, then great, because that means that she gets to develop a relationship with a key person in her life who should have been there from the beginning, but at least he's there now, right?
He's still there now, right? He didn't get to take her to kindergarten, but maybe he could walk her down the aisle.
Maybe he can walk her down the aisle.
Maybe he can, right?
On our end to get to that place where we don't carry all those burdens. I could not walk into another relationship if I was still stuck on how shitty, you know, things ended with him, and how he ain't this and how he ain't that. But instead, I've had to just live my life and do what I need to do. And when he got ready to step in, I'm not gonna, you know, tell him all the whatever. Now he don't get to come in and tell me nothing about what she's gonna do and how she's gonna be. You ain't been there long enough to have established the authority to do those things. But because I want her to have that relationship, well, then here, text them, call them. You know, they got a whole little thing going on. I don't really know a whole lot about it, right? I try to stay out of that because I think she's at the age to be able to develop that. And I just think that as women, we have to make sure that our bitterness towards someone who maybe hasn't always been that great, doesn't stop us from allowing that second chance to come in, or doesn't stop us from allowing that relationship to grow when it happens.
I agree. Look, if somebody said, saying you're not a fan of his is not good, though. I would say in that, and maybe Jice on it, but since I picked out the question, I think what was being said, well, I would say, I don't think, because I know, because we've had this conversation, me and Jice are friends in real life. It's the fact that once they become a teenager and they're asking questions, you say, well, the way things happen between us, they're old enough to say that I'm not really a fan, so I don't want to give you my perception of him.
Right.
Get to know your dad. That's what it was.
So yes, thank you for clearing that up. And that's exactly what it was.
Trying to say to her, don't get your perception from me, because me and him didn't have this great, but you and him, that's different. Y'all build your own. So that's what was said to her daughter, because she's not a little kid.
Right. And I think it's important to, you know, and this has been my take, especially because until recently, my daughter was an only child. So my daughter was an only child for 10 years. Right. So it was important to me, as being a single mom and having an only child, and really teaching her. And this is just my own parenting philosophy. You know, I've always taught my daughter we're a team. Right. So we got to be open with each other. We have to be honest with each other. And of course, there are things that children don't need to know, but there are also ways that you can be fairly transparent with a child, you know, in that type of a scenario where I feel like we need to be close. And so when she began to ask me questions about her father, you know, I don't have a lot to say about him. And so I didn't go and tell him he ain't this and he ain't that. And I didn't go and run down, you know, all of the whatever. I remember my daughter asking me one time, she said, well, do you think he just didn't know when I was born? And I was like, ooh, it took everything in me to be like, no, that nigga knew everything.
you about how many years old? I'm sure he knows you're here by now.
Right. That was the reality, but that was a genuine question. Like, she's basically asking me, well, why wasn't he here? Right. This, you know, was there a problem? Maybe he didn't know. And I'm thinking like, you know, okay, he knew. So I had to check myself. And I was like, well, no, he knew that you were born. And so she was like, well, how come, you know, if he knew I was born, how come he didn't come and see me? Well, you need to ask him that question, right? And so I had to deflect back to him. Hey, I don't have to come up with those answers. Those are questions he has to answer.
Right.
Those were his actions. No one ever kept him away from, you know, being there. So I cannot be the person to come in and answer for him. But what I can do is push her to be bold enough and empower her to go and ask those questions. So me saying I'm not a fan of him, that was as honest as I could be with her without telling him that nigga ain't shit.
Right.
But again, we already said we're not perfect, right? So I don't profess to be perfect in the situation. I'm just telling you what I did.
Who knows? She might have went and asked him, and he might have said, you know what? Your dad was really young and dumb back then, and I made a whole lot of mistakes, and I should have been there, and I apologize for that. But guess what? That's a moment her and her dad have to have. That's not really up to us as the mothers. It's not, right? So if he's willing to admit that, however they work through that, that's on him to work out with him and his daughter, right? It ain't never us, and we need to stop picking up that burden, right? If the father is a deadbeat, you just let life live and let time pass. That child will grow up to become an adult, and they will have their own opinion, and let them say you were deadbeat because you didn't A, B, C, D, F, G. Deadbeat shows because they're not there. So they'll get old enough to learn that on their own, right? So we just got to leave it to life and let the kids decide that, right?
Right. And I do think this is a question. She says, I think it's Yamaya says, what happens when the father is toxic and transfers that energy to his children about their mother? And I have not had that situation happen to me, but what I will say is that I feel like that's still another one of those things that you kind of just have to let play out, because children are smart. You know, they get when dad is over here talking shit, but when they're with their mom, they know their mom cares for them. They know their mom, you know, so maybe mom needs to check herself and make sure, you know, that she's doing the right types of things as well. But, you know, I think if my daughter's father tried to say anything about me, my daughter knows who I am, right? She knows who feeds her, who clothes her, who makes sure her hair is done, who takes her out to places, you know, who gives her these life experiences that she has not gotten from, you know, anywhere else. And so I don't feel like I have to necessarily defend myself against his toxicness, because people can feel, you know, those energies transfer. If my daughter feels a certain negative energy coming from somebody, she don't really want to be over there. She don't want to spend time with that person. So I think you kind of counteract that negative energy with keeping the energy making your space positive. That's how I would look at that.
Well, eventually, like I said, they're going to grow up. They know what parent was there for them and which one wasn't. So you can say all you want, but when they look up and be like, man, you can't tell me nothing about my mom. My mom been here for everything. My mom loved me. My mom, you know what I'm saying? Actions speak louder than words. And that's in any relationship. As a parent, as a co-worker, as a friend or whatever, actions speak louder than words. People talk a whole lot. So just make sure you do what's right. So Jice, I would say this though, because we talked a lot about this, but we still got 2 more topics. We want to talk about toxic femininity and being hoes. Y'all ready for that conversation? Right? Because you know what, the feminists today, what do they say? They sit up there and they say, oh, well, we should be equal to men. We can do whatever we want. I personally do not want to be equal to men because we're not equal to men. Like, they're built in a different fashion and form, their makeup, just the energy that they bring in their spirits that they have been given by God, as well as we're different from them, right? Men and women are not the same. I mean, if you just want to talk about, I mean, just obvious differences, most men don't have boobs. I mean, some of them do, but milk don't come out of them and they're not real, right? There's very subtle, there's small differences that are just obvious. We're not the same in a lot of ways.
Wait, let me interject here real quick, because I think we need to acknowledge what's the difference between equal and different, right? Yes. We're not the same, but I would at least assert that our role, we have different, we're built differently for a reason, right? So it's really to bring that balance. And so I don't think that it's a matter of being equal or not equal. I think it's a matter of being the same.
I agree. But you know, when feminists talk about equality, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about, you know, I want to be equal in every way to a man, all of the things that I get. So let me give you an example. Like, women say, why do men get certain jobs or get paid this much? Now, you go to a construction site, right? Most of the time you're going to find men on there. You're not equal to that, because at the end of the day, most of you probably can't handle that job. Some women can, don't get me wrong, because some of y'all walking around here, y'all big and buffed in the motherfucker, right? Y'all strong, but whatever. But I'm just saying, for the most part, that's a job you're going to see men on, because in there we're not equal in strength, right? So there's some things we're not equal in that sense. And so when they talk about equality, they want to say that they're just like men, but women are not just like men. So I mean, in the sense of those purposes. So I know feminism will say, you know, we should be able to do whatever we want and not be called out for it. So let's talk about the hoe culture, right? The hoe culture, H-O-E, hoe. Okay, because men have been known to just be hoes, right? And it's okay for men to be hoes. They can run around and be with a lot of women and still somehow keep their manhood, because that makes them a man to some extent in society, right? But when women do that, that make them look a certain way. And so people are saying that, you know, women are saying we should be able to carry ourselves just like the men carry themselves. But I will say this. You are right. As an adult, if you want to go around and you want to be real sexual, you want to have sex with whoever you want, you can go have sex with whoever you want. You can dress however you want. But what I'm tired of hearing when we talk about toxic femininity is when I watch you on social media and your ass is in the picture more than your face is, right? Your titties is in the camera more than your face is. And then you turn around and you say, well, you're not respecting me as a woman. You walk down the street with a sheer shirt on and your titties showing, and I can see the dimples in your ass because your shorts are so short and they fit you so tight. You are projecting nothing but sex. But if a man walks up to you and says, yo, shorty, let me take that back to my crib, you're gonna say this man is acting in toxic masculinity. How dare you talk to a woman like that? Because when you walk down the street dressed like that, you're not projecting a woman, you're projecting a hoe. You're projecting a woman who says, see me for my sex before you ever see me for the human being that I might be, before you see me for my intelligence. We're just gonna deal with what reality is. You don't get to walk down the street with a G-string up your ass and then wonder why everybody's looking at your ass. Now, I'm not saying somebody can come along and touch you because your ass is out. That's not ever, I'm not talking about touching. I'm talking about how you're perceived. You do not get to walk around these new feminist women and project yourself as a hoe, but then say, why are you treating me like a hoe? Because you're carrying yourself like a hoe. So if guys are in your inbox left and right talking about, yo, baby, send me some naked pics, but the picture on Instagram, you half naked and we can all see your nipples through your shirt anyway, don't be shocked. Like, why are you disrespecting me being in my inbox talking to me like this? See, you'll tell him, there you go with that disrespect and that toxic masculinity. That's actually not toxic masculinity. That is toxic femininity, baiting men, because you know men are human beings. You know they're very sexual objects. Naturally, they're going to look at that shit. So you greet them with the sex. And then when they respond to the sex, you say, why you treating me like this? Are you fucking for real? So this is
and I think we have to recognize, like, there's a way to be sexy without the raunchiness or what you say.
Sexiness ain't hoism. It's a difference.
It is. It is. It's a difference in the way that you carry yourself. It's a difference in the way that even in the way that you dress. And I don't think that it's an issue with necessarily that you can't dress and be revealing, but when you are dressing that way, in a revealing light, and you are asking for attention, right? You knew that when you walked out with, slits that came all the way up to your hips, that was what you wanted, right? Because here's the reality of it. If you came outside, your nipples was showing, all your ass is hanging out, all your thighs is hanging out, and nobody said anything to you, you will go home and cry. You will feel like
tell the truth,
right? You
put it on to be seen.
Right, you did, right? And I hate when people say that, because I think that it's interesting. Like, if you want someone to see your thighs, if you love the way that you look and you're, very comfortable with your body and you want that attention, then I think you need to be okay with walking in the fact that you want that attention, right? Mm-hmm. I definitely know the difference of when I walked out in yoga pants and a mom, and then when I walked out on a Friday night, and I know what I've done to myself if I want some extra attention that night. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with getting attention. I think that it is the idea that you walked out like you did that for you, but you didn't really do that for you. Or you did that for you to get the attention that you wanted, but you wanted to make it seem like you don't really want that attention, right? If you really truly didn't get that attention, I promise you're gonna feel like it's something wrong. You didn't get enough selfie likes. It's something wrong. Like we need that type of attention, right? Not that we should, but if you then post the selfie like you wanted the likes, so when you don't get them, you feel some kind of way. If you pose with your ass hanging out, you were expecting for men to like it. Or maybe you like women and you were expecting for women to like it, right? But you were expecting for that to happen. And if it doesn't, you're going to feel very insecure about yourself and what you're projecting. So it's kind of that double standard, and very toxic. I agree.
Right. And I would say, if you want to have equality, I would tell you that I treat men the same. Women, let me tell you something. What they say, you can't turn no hoe into a housewife. A man don't want no hoe if everybody done had you in the community, but we don't want community dingy either. I'm just letting you know. The real women, we don't want your community dingy either. So both of y'all can be hoes on the same standard, and we okay with that. All I'm saying is, if you project sexuality, do not be mad when that's the attention you get back. You don't get to do both. You don't get to project one and say, how dare you, when that's what you put out there. Because we do that far too damn often. And I mean, if you want to be a hoe, but do not be mad when you act like a hoe and people treat you like a hoe. I mean,
well, I think that's interesting too, because again, we do have to start like, and here's what I feel like. We do have to offset, some of the cultural norms that are a little bit toxic, right? There are women, and me and Mechee have talked about some of the differences in us, and I'm not about to put neither one of our business out there, but just know, me and Mechee sit on different sides of this fence. You can take a wild guess at who you think sits on what side of the fence, okay? But what I will say is that, there are some women who are very much equipped to have multiple sex partners, who are very much equipped to be able to be very free in her sexuality, right? And there are some women who are not. And you find oftentimes that because of the type of propaganda that's being pushed out there, that women are kind of being pushed into this situation where you feel like you should be this side chick, or you should be in a polygamous relationship when you're not ready, or you should project yourself to be in a very sexual object, or in a sexual light, and then also like reject and push off men when they approach you, right? The whole idea around this Me Too thing has got women saying that if you even approach me and I have not given you permit, like how do men even know at this point whether or not it's okay to even compliment a woman? Because compliment me. Like, I didn't ask for that compliment. Well, how the fuck do you ask for a compliment? If you ask for a compliment, you fishing. If you don't ask for a compliment, you know what I'm saying? If a man says something, he's thirsty. I mean, it gets to be all of these different like convoluted rules, whereas I feel like we should be empowered to just speak up for what it is. If a man compliments me and I don't want any compliments, I don't need to crush his whole spirit. I could just be like, thanks, bro, but I'm good, right? That's just me being empowered to speak up for myself.
I take all compliments. I think they don't want men to be men anymore. I could be walking down the street and a drunk on the corner could be like, hey, girl, you fine in a motherfucker. I'm gonna laugh and I'm gonna say thank you and keep pushing. Because in his own way, he was giving me a compliment. I'm tired of these women acting like they offended. Like, what the fuck? Say thank you and get gone.
Right.
I'm tired of that. Men don't know if they can buy you a drink, if they can compliment you anymore, because it does get, this is toxic masculinity. No, he just acting like a man. He just saw a woman. He like, shut the fuck up.
Right. And I think it's a matter of women feeling empowered to draw the line, right? If a man is like, "Hey girl, you fine," and you say thank you, and now he's following you down the street, right? And
Well,
he's
that's
gonna
different.
keep going. Right, that is different. And then that's when you turn around and be like, "Yo, bruh, like back up," right? And so I think that that we have to be able to just feel what I see is that women just need to feel a little bit more empowered. And I do think that some of our society has you know, through propaganda and through the way that we have portrayed how women are supposed to be, that some women struggle with that empowerment piece, right? And so what I would assert is it's not really an issue that the men have, it's really an issue that the women have to be more empowered, right? And so then as a mother who has a son, then I also have to teach my son how to be respectful of women, right? And that starts with me. I teach my son how to respect me as a woman. And then I have to teach him then as he starts to deal with women his age, how to be respectful of them, right? So I think, you know, it goes both ways, but women have to feel empowered to speak up for themselves, but do so in a way where you give a man a chance to just be who he is and do what he's doing, and not make the assumption that he's out here to offend you. And then allow yourself, if he does start to overstep the line, just be like, "Yo, we good, we cool, that's enough." And you know, and then take it from there. I think sometimes we jump the gun on that.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm tired of them. I think, okay, let's say this, that women need to feel empowered to speak up for themselves. Let me say that I don't see weak women in this country. I think women have been more than empowered. I think they speak up all the fucking time. I actually think they get heard a whole lot more than they would like to project that they do in this world. And I'm saying that as a woman wholeheartedly. Every time I turn around, women are running their mouths about what they want, they empowerment, they marching down the street, they want this, they want that. Men is scared than a motherfucker. Everybody bend over backwards and give a woman what the fuck they want. In the courtroom, they get what they want. When it come to kids in custody, right? They get what they want when it comes to every other thing. And so we have this thing of women say they're not equal, but what women will not tend to also admit is that in this country, because they're women, they get a whole lot of patting on the back and, oh, let's be soft and let's be nice to women because women are nice and gentle. When the truth is that's not what women always show us, which might help project us into our next conversation and topic about toxic femininity, which is women predators. See, because this is the thing, is that women do talk up, women are empowered. What you find is that women get a whole lot of privilege in this country that they don't want to acknowledge. Now, are there some ways where we don't get privileges? Yes, because this is a patriarchal society, right? But at the end of the day, there's a lot that we let women get away with in this country because you're a girl, right? We watch the feminists do it all the time. They so rough and tough when they want to fight and they have their way, but let them do some dumb shit. We talked about who was the white woman that called Harvey Weinstein out. Now I know this is white people, but let me give you an example, because white people, women is feminists. I don't fuck with the feminists, and I don't know why black women do, right? But what did she do? She called out Harvey Weinstein, made this big ass issue at the awards show, and then a couple weeks later, it's pictures of this bitch surfacing with her in the bed with a 16, 17-year-old boy, 16 years old, when he was on the shoot with her. They were working on a movie together years ago, and she was sleeping with him. But somehow that got overlooked. Like, this woman, but let that have been a grown-ass man in Hollywood sleeping with a 16-year-old girl, it would have been a whole nother story. So what we are also going to say as women, when it comes to toxic femininity, stop acting like women don't have any rights in this country. There are some privileges you don't get, but there's plenty of privileges that women get in this country that men are never fucking afforded. And when it comes to that, predatory women is one of them. Women prey people sexually all the time. So we're going to stop acting like it's just men.
Right. And I think that's really important to acknowledge, because I know I can't even tell you of any man that I know that I can that can readily just pop up in my mind. I mean, almost every one of them that I know, especially the ones who have lost their virginity as young teenagers. Some of them talking about 10 years old, 11 years old.
I think they babysitter.
9 years old, right. Have
babysitters and they mommy nasty friend.
Babysitting women, right, and adult women, teachers. I mean, it's a little bit scary. I mean, as a woman now who has a son, like, it's not just you got to watch the men around your daughters. You have to watch women around your son.
Oh, yes. Yes. Right. And I was telling you earlier, if nobody believe me, go look it up. I don't have the statistics on my head at this moment, but just know that when we talk about schools and teachers molesting and having sex with students, I don't even want to say molesting. They be full on having sex with these children, right? Women teachers have been found and convicted far more for having sex with their students than male teachers ever have. Let's tell the truth. How many of y'all remember cases? There's a lot you haven't seen come to the forefront and be major news cases, but there are several I'm sure that y'all can remember, right? So you remember the woman who was having sex with one boy and she got pregnant by him. She was told to stay away from him. She got caught again while she was out on bail having sex with him. She did go to jail. She didn't do very much time. When she got out, she waited till he was 18 and then they got married and had 2 more kids. And so now they've been on the news. It was years back talking about how happy they are together and this and that. So some people will say this because he's a boy. Well, look, he's older now. He's in his 20s, going on his 30s. They've been married many years. Maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, I would ask y'all, what happened if a 15-year-old girl was having sex with her male teacher? He got her pregnant. He went to jail. He only did a year and a half, right? And then when he got out, he waited for her to turn 18. She went back to him and they had more kids and they were married. You know what we would say as a society? That little girl is brainwashed and he fucked her up and he's molested her. He got out of jail. He got her pregnant and now he's giving her other babies. And even though she's in her 20s and she's decided to be with this man still, we would say he's brainwashed her. But yet and still this boy is not brainwashed because, of course, when guys get coochie, it doesn't matter how they get it. You could be 10 and it could be your mama nasty 30-year-old friend. Just be glad you got some grown woman coochie. No, boys being sexually assaulted at too early of an age distorts their mind and their perception when it comes to sex as well. And then we wonder why boys grow up and they're always saying, you know, they're always looking to sex or thinking sex is something that should drive them. More men in this country of all races think with their penis more than they ever think with their head. But we have to begin to think, for as much as we say women are sexual objects, men are too, because men have been geared to be told that sex is great. It doesn't matter if you get it from an ugly woman, an old woman, a young woman. If you getting some sex, men should accept all sex. If you are 14 and your first experience was with your 26-year-old babysitter, you got some grown woman coochie. We award you. But how do you know that 14-year-old wasn't ready for that grown ass shit? Just like a 14-year-old girl is not ready for a grown ass man to be having sex with her. But we will tell the boys, suck it up. But we know that shit hurts them. And if you think I'm lying, I'm gonna just say one name and give you the proof. R. fucking Kelly. A woman did that to him. His fucking sister started that shit. I don't know who did it to her, but I want you to know that R. Kelly, being the monster he was, that seed was planted by a female.
Right. And we don't want to talk about that. I spoke on that. Matter of fact, they had 9 News had called me to do a segment on R. Kelly. They never even aired it because I did not say they did not air it because I did not say what they thought I was going to say. They asked me about my take from Black women on R. Kelly, and I told them up front, I was like, listen, you ain't gonna like what I have to say, because by no means, you know, would I ever give R. Kelly a pass in any sense.
No.
And the but comes from that unchecked trauma. It breeds more trauma. And so we want to look at the end result and we don't want to go back to where it started. We don't want to go back to that wound, right? And so who knows, maybe she sexually abused him because somebody sexually abused her, because somebody has sexually abused them. And if we don't ever address it and cut it, you know, then it becomes this vicious cycle. But I think oftentimes when we're talking about, you know, the uncle sitting at the table who we won't ostracize, we might also need to recognize that there may be an auntie sitting at the table who we ain't ostracizing either. And all of that creates this, you know, a very cyclical based trauma that is happening in our communities. And so then when we look at how that plays out, it plays out poorly in both boy children and girl children. So those things have to be checked. They have to start being checked immediately.
And I want to know, I mean, as mothers, let's think about this too. Do we gear our sons towards thinking that all this sexual behavior is okay? How many of us can admit that we ourselves, or either we have family members that we have watched, right? We have watched your daughter be 15 and she's not allowed to go anywhere or date anybody or do any of those things until she gets older. But yet and still, because your son, he's a boy, you allow him to go and do those things at the same age. I don't necessarily think that that's necessarily a good thing, right? You tend to tell your sons from the beginning that they can do things that women can't do. That starts with that patriarchy shit. But let me tell you something. If your son at 15, your daughter at 15 is not mentally ready for a relationship, neither is your son, right? To the point where if you're letting him hang out at night and you think he's okay and, oh, he'll come in and he can stay out later, but my daughter can't stay out later. These streets will snatch your child up too, right? But even to the point where I've seen 16-year-old boys have full-on girlfriends, and their parents know they be having relationships, and they be letting them spend the night over here and go over to the boy house and, you know, over to the girl's house. And so it's okay for our sons to do that, but not our girls. So we're always priming our boys from a very young age to be okay with sex and to always accept it, because that's what a man should do. So we gear them in that vein no matter what. So to say they're not seen as sexual objects, yes, they are. Men are told that sex should never be a bad thing for you, ever. And sex can definitely be a bad thing for male.
Right. And that's another space where that toxic femininity breeds toxic masculinity, because those little boys grow up to see to see sex in a certain light, to see women in a certain light, and then that turns into the man who you're upset about, you know, who you're upset at, right? That turns into the man who didn't treat you right, who treated you like a sex object, who didn't respect you. And yet we're not doing or making a lot of changes with how we do our sons. So, and especially because there are a lot of women in these single parent situations who, you know, like to keep the fathers away from the boys, right? And all of that. And so we got to look at how we as women contribute to that conversation around toxic masculinity. In particular, in the Black community, a lot of times we are raising our boys. So if our boys are inside of that environment and we feel like these men are toxic, and we go back and we look at what the mom is doing, it's a lot of times because mom is carrying a lot of baggage and burden, and she's toxic.
This is true. Look, so Chris asked the question. He said, can I ask where you got your figures from regarding female offenders? Because every research I've done regarding those offenses have been 77% of offenders being white male and 12% being women. I'm not talking about sexual offenses in general. I'm talking about teachers within the school who have assaulted students. And if you go look back, there are way more cases that we don't push to the forefront. If you go look them up, about teachers, and they're usually white women, but some of them are Black women as well. If you go look them up, but you will find very large amount of stories of female teachers who have molested students or had sexual, even teachers women teachers who have gone to parties and had gangbangs and have had sex with 5 high school boys. So I'm talking about that research specifically to a group, not overall in the whole.
Right. But I also think there's a difference between what's being reported and then what we know, right? I mean, a lot of times, like, men are very rarely reporting when they've lost, like, they're not even, a lot of times I don't think they're even considering it that they have been sexually assaulted. Now, in today's kind of conversation, I think that there are some men who would acknowledge, okay, well, yeah, I was sexually assaulted as a child. And there are some, you know, obviously there are men who like just flat out been molested, right? But let me take that back. There are men who have been molested who recognize that they were molested. But I have had multiple conversations with men who are saying, well, I had my babysitter who was touching me, or I had my babysitter who I lost my virginity to. I had my babysitter who gave me head. I had my babysitter who wanted me to touch her. And they didn't even recognize that as being something that, you know, that was necessarily a bad thing, because of the way that we have presented it. You know, they looked at it as being something that was like, you know, I basically got props, or they felt like it was cool. They had an older woman, you know, things like that. So I think when we're looking at, you know, it being something that was reported, I don't think that these things are necessarily being reported, right?
Oh, no.
That we are.
Men get laughed at. Right. Men get laughed at if they do that. And if you're a teenager and you're sleeping with a grown woman, I have several
Exactly. I don't think a lot of men see it as a problem now.
Right. I have several male friends, and one in particular who keeps striking me. He lost his virginity to his 22-year-old babysitter, but he was 13 years old. And he is a almost 40-year-old man, and to this very day he still talks about that situation. And maybe he didn't think about it in that sense, but as he's become an older man, he has looked back on it, and it has really bothered him that that's the way that it was lost and how the situation was, because he feels like after he had sex with that woman, that was something at such a young age he couldn't handle, right? And physically, when you start having sex, it's something that begins to take over your hormones and everything. So ever since then, he felt like he began to be sex driven, and it was something that just kind of drove his life, because he wasn't even experiencing sex at that age. But once you get that type of a feeling, then it distorted for him. And that was something he was always chasing. And at 40 years old, he can have this conversation now. He didn't realize then it bothered him. But as a 40-year-old man, he remembers it like yesterday. He still talks about it. And he realizes now that it set him on a downhill slope of him looking at sex and it being distorted for him and given to him at too young of an age, which caused him to look at relationships, women, and sex in a very different way than he really would have liked to do so, right? And these are his own words.
And so I just think we have to be more careful about our children just in general. Like we're very trusting of women over men when it comes to our children, right? We look for women babysitters. I actually lost a friend recently, and it hurt me to my heart. We've been friends for about 11 or 12 years. And for whatever reason, she was like, she had some impression that I had my children around a lot of men. I really don't even fully understand where she got this impression from, because she kind of yelled it at me over the phone one day. And I know it was kind of rooted in some of her own trauma. But since we had not had an opportunity to really ever speak and clear it up, I don't, I can't really fully tell you where it was coming from. But I tried to tell her, I was like, sis, like, I don't trust my kids with, with hardly anybody, right? It's not, I don't trust my children with men. I don't trust my children with men or women. I want you to be kind of vetted. I want to know that my children feel comfortable with you. If my children even seem like they're like kind of standoffish with you, I'm gonna take that as a sign and a clue that something has maybe transpired, that they don't feel good, or that maybe they don't like your energy. Whatever it is, but I don't force my children to be around women and keep them away from men in the idea that women are safe and men are potential predators, right? I definitely recognize that women are potential predators. And even when we look at sometimes how some of these, sex rings are going, there are women out here pimping women.
Mm-hmm. It's women the women that go and bring the girls.
Women.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is a propaganda situation that we have to recognize, that we have to be careful about people and not just think automatically that I need to watch my daughter around, a man, and not think to watch your son.
Right. But that's what society wants to project.
What women are doing.
Right. That's what society wants to project, though. They want you to think that men, in general, especially Black men, they want you to think that they're the predators, right? And they're the ones that are always going around victimizing everybody, and that women don't do those things. That's part of that toxic femininity. We get to sit back and be like, because we're a girl and we're feminine, we're soft, and we're not the monsters you want to make us out to be. And to me, that's toxic femininity, because you use that, but then all of a sudden you're tough, and now girls run the world and you're doing everything, and you got all this woman magic, and we're equal to men, and we're so strong, and we could be whatever we want to be. But then as soon as you start doing fuck shit because you're not a decent human being, right? Then all of a sudden you start hiding behind that. And it doesn't change the fact that you're doing fucked up shit just because you're a woman. And I don't give you no pass because of them tears. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And I just get tired of projecting that. And we wonder why our men are always so quick to act in a what we want to call toxic masculinity. But I will tell you that society feeds that toxic masculinity more than anything else, being in a patriotic society. Even us as women, sometimes we feed that shit in the way that we see everything. Even in just this conversation we're having about how sex is looked at different when it happens to boys at a young age versus women at a young age, right? To me, both are looked at as sexual objects, but we don't tend to say that about men. And a lot of women will get offended if you say that. But men are sexual objects, and just in a different light. Not that all they're good for is sex, but all you should be wanting from somebody is some sex. Like, the more sex you get, the more man you are. That's toxic masculinity, to think that the more women you sleep with makes you more of a man, right? So you go around making babies or sleeping with a bunch of people. But the truth is, society projects that shit. Women do too, because the man who got 5 women, that's the one that every woman wants, right? So it's like we continue to project that shit on men as well. And then when they act that way, we act like, where y'all get it from? The society, they told them to be that way.
Right. So can you clarify what you mean? Is it toxic femininity, or is it just stereotypes and preconceived notions?
I will say that no, it is toxic femininity, right? It's where a woman, when I say toxic femininity, it's where women use being a woman to get away with bad behavior. So that is very much toxic femininity, just like we talk about men doing things and getting away with bad behavior because they say, oh, well, this is just what men do, so we should accept it. And there are things that women hide behind their, I'm a woman, so this is just how it is. But really they're projecting and doing bad behavior, and they hide behind the fact that they're a woman, so it makes it okay for them to do it. That's what makes it toxic. So these are not assumptions. These are not stereotypes. We're not saying that all women do this. We're speaking to specific groups of women. We talked about mothers that are toxic for their children, which is definitely not an assumption. These are truths. These things destroy your children. And we talk about deadbeat dads. They are very much deadbeat mothers. And it's not because they don't pay child support. They are in the home, but they are causing all kinds of issues for their children because of their jealousy, right? You have women who project this, oh, look at me for sex. And then as soon as they get a sexual comment, now they're screaming me too. That's toxic femininity, right? You know, and then, like I said, you have these women around here who act like they're so innocent, but women are predators too. They're out here molesting children, raping kids in our school. They're out here doing just as much as these Catholic priests and these men and every damn body else. So this projection that women can't rape anybody, we need to stop that too, because they statutory rape and molest people all the time. Women are not always good people. Cardi B just fucking told y'all how she sit up there and she will get a man to come to the room and then drug him and rape his pockets, or will drug him up and have sex with him with a tranny because he's so drunk, and then the next morning blackmail him and tell him you had sex with a tranny. So that's not women being toxic. She didn't assault that man. She didn't rape that man, because if that man doesn't have sex with transsexuals, then how do you make a man participate in something that he didn't want to participate in, not knowing this is a man giving him head because you done got him so drunk? What's the difference if you drug him up? Drugging is a crime. But if you drug a woman and rape her, that's a horrible thing. But if you drug a man and rape his pockets, he shouldn't have been in the room with a hoe. Really? So I'm just saying, like, women do fucked up shit, and we're gonna stop acting like they don't, because they women.
Right. And it's interesting too, because of the perception that if a man wants to turn away, sex is something wrong with him, right? I mean, what do you mean you don't want me? It must be something wrong with you, right? But there's a law that, or I don't know if it's, let me not say that it's a law, but I've heard this and I haven't researched it, so don't quote me. I don't actually generally like talking about some shit I haven't researched. But there was somebody, they were talking about the fact that if a woman is drunk, then she cannot give consent, right? I don't know if y'all have heard that. If y'all have heard that before, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Drunk,
I seen a poster.
Consent. And what I'm confused at is, how can anybody at the club then give consent? Because can a drunk man give consent? I don't understand.
No, not in this society. If you're a man,
right, it doesn't apply to, if I understood it correctly, it doesn't apply to men. What they're saying is that if a drunk man and a drunk woman go home together, they leave the club together, that man does not get the same protection as that woman. She cannot give you consent, so automatically, although he may be drunk as well, he's automatically raped her because she's not able to give consent. As a mom with a son, that concerns me. I don't feel like, first of all, I'm responsible as a grown ass person for how much I drink. Yes. Period, right? So unless you roofied me or you gave me something, I get to decide how many shots I take, how many drinks I down. If I allow myself to get to a place where I'm drunk, and that means that I cannot give consent, I don't understand how that means that the other person who's also drinking and who's also drunk has the ability to discern whether or not he's doing something right or wrong, if I don't have the ability to discern whether or not I'm doing something right or wrong. That's, to me, that's a horrible policy, statute, law, whatever it is.
Ask the feminists, do they want equality with that? Can we get equality with that law, or no? We don't want to do that, right? Because brothers, how many times y'all done went somewhere to a club, had too many drinks, homegirl looked real good in the dark, and when you woke up next to her, you was like, oh shit, I really did this? You should be able to call the police and tell them you was drunk and this chick raped you. That's called equality. But that would never work. But the woman can wake up the next day and regret it and say, well, I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't give that consent. And you could find yourself in jail. Like what she's saying, Jice is not lying. Like they've been pushing that since the Me Too thing, that if a woman is drunk and a man is drunk, and the poster says exactly that. Josie, I think they give them names. Josie is drunk and Joseph is drunk. They have sex. Josie cannot give consent because she was drunk. That's what the poster says. But apparently the guy is supposed to be held accountable. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand how that works, because if as feminists we're talking about equality here, then all you brothers that regret y'all one night stands because you drank a little too much and wasn't in your right mind, you should be able to scream rape when you wake up the next morning and look at her. That's equality.
We don't want to talk about that though, right?
No, we're gonna give a moment of silence for that.
I do get that there are a lot of women victims, right? So by no means is this anything to take away from the fact that they're women victims, but I think that we have to, we have to take some responsibility. And again, that's why we're having a conversation about it. We're women. We tend to act responsibly. We tend to try and check ourselves and think internally. And we see a lot of these trends and these things that happen with women in our society that we got to stop. We're not going to be able to call out our men in ways. And like I said, I think it's something when you are raising a son and you think differently about the way that we project men or how we raise our men, and think about what those implications might mean for your son, right? And so if you're a woman, and I just want to speak to women who may have felt like they've been victims, or I want to speak to women who may be victims. Let me not say that you may have felt like that, who may be victims of certain things. If you're carrying around a lot of baggage as a woman, I want to urge you to go and get help, because I say this for all Black women, all Black people, right? We carry trauma in our DNA, and it's going to take a lot to uproot that and push it out. But we need to make sure that we're going to get the help that we need so that we don't continue that cycle. What was that look for, Mechee?
Oh, no, I was reading somebody comment. That's all.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. What was that look for?
It wasn't a bad comment. I was just trying to read. Don't be reading my face. I got to learn to do the resting bitch face all the time. I be wearing my people be talking, I be looking like, shut your ass up. I don't even be knowing shut your ass up is all on my face though. No, I was trying to read the comments. I wasn't thinking nothing. I was just listening to what you were saying. I mean, I'm listening, but I agree in the sense of what you're saying, that for women, if we're talking about toxic femininity, these are all the things that women do. I think it's a difference when men be like, look, y'all got to stop doing this shit because it's men, this is what we're seeing and we want to be heard too, right? It doesn't really have as much of an effect. I think that it takes women to stand up and say to other women, look, we're women like you. We understand the positions you're in, but we have to tell you that this is not where it's at. And this is not what it's about. I think that we're responsible for standing up as women and being able to fight against that. And this is the reason why, because for any woman that says, well, why should I stand up and fight about men being treated and us not doing certain things to men? And I will say to you, if you have a father, that's why you should. If you have a grandfather, if you have a uncle, if you have brothers, if you have sons, this is why you should do so, because you may not care about toxic femininity, or you might say, well, that's not my issue, or who cares about these men, because you mad at your baby daddy, the way that he done you, or the last man that you dated, or the food that made you mad. But you're forgetting that that 7-year-old boy that you have, or that 2-month-old baby in your arms today, or your son that's 18 getting ready to go off to college, that they are open targets, especially if they're Black men, and that at the end of the day, that there are so many things that can come after them, and that as a woman, if things that women are doing in this country today is projecting your sons in lights, that that's not who your son is, right? Or just to know, like we talk about Albert, forgive me, I don't know his last name, that boy was 18 years old, but he met a girl at a club where you're supposed to be 21 and over. He went with her, she was 17, back to his place. Nothing really took place because his friend texted him and was like, come on back. He went back to the bar with the white girl. The word is the white girl was mad because he didn't want to finish with her, because and no evidence showed they ever had sex or anything. His saliva was on her chest where he said he did kiss her, but then they had some foreplay. The friend was like, come on back, and he came back. She probably got mad because she didn't stay to sleep with him. The next day, guess what? She cries rape, and this boy is off in prison, right? And he never even had sex with the girl. The evidence shows that there was no sexual intercourse. So if you're okay with your son maybe being in that position one day, then keep sitting your ass on the couch talking about what the fuck men don't do, what they ain't doing, and what kind of predators they are. But when you find your son in that position, think about how the fuck they got there. And you got to give some credibility to the fact that the reason these things are happening is because women and Me Too movement and the feminist movement are going towards all this fucking toxic femininity, talking about what they want. And in the path of what they're doing, they're tearing down all masculinity and all men. They don't even want men to be men anymore. Why the fuck you think they got tube tops? I better not catch a brother in a tube top. Do not come around me in a tube top. I swear to God. I swear to God. Okay, so this is what they're doing. They're trying to turn all men into women, or make them be so scared to be a man by giving a woman a compliment, trying to buy you a drink, trying to interact with you because he likes you, right? They want all men to give away their masculinity and be scared to be men, and all of these women want to have all of the goddamn power or say over what it is. I don't agree with that shit. I don't like this shit. I'm not feeling it, because I have sons and men in my life that I care about. And I'll be damned if I sit back and don't say nothing, and then they turn around and become a victim of toxic femininity, and I'm supposed to stand with women just because I'm a woman? Nah, I'm not doing that.
Right. Well, all right, y'all. So we supposed to have this conversation a long time ago. We may have to have a part 2 of this conversation, because there's a whole lot more shit we could address. Y'all already know what it is. But we've been on here for a little bit, so we finna wrap it on up. Let me throw out all the rest of these plugs. Mechee, let me know if I'm missing any plugs. Y'all go over to the BlackAgendaOnTour.com, grab your tickets, text BlackAgenda to 484848. Don't run around checking craziness, y'all, but start to check on your sisters. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of the end of it, right? Ask yourself what you can be doing, or if there's, you know, ways that you're contributing to these types of situations. But when you see it happening with other sisters, you know, let's begin to you know, work on ourselves, right? We talk about how we don't need these systems, but what we got to do is we have to start working on ourselves in order to break the systems that exist. And we have to be willing to be accountable to the type of communities and to being the type of people that we want to be. So, you know, sometimes that starts with some internal checking. And so anyway, that's what we out here doing. Y'all make sure y'all go over to the Black Agenda on tour. Let me just end with that. Is there anything else you want to add, Mechee?
No. Y'all know I can talk all day, but I'm gonna be live in an hour my damn self. So
right. So y'all make sure that you tune in to Mechee coming on at 6 o'clock Mountain. What is that? 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank y'all for coming on into the live. Y'all know I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays around 3 o'clock ish. Hey, I want to also encourage you to go and make sure that you subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hey, you guys make sure to check out Thinking About This and thinking about relationships and some of those things and the ways that we as women can kind of grow and change. I want to let y'all know about a podcast that I'm dropping next Wednesday. This sister who I interviewed, she has a dope business and they have a great relationship. And so she's got some jewels to drop as well. So make sure that you tune in for that. It's not live. I pre-record my podcast, but if you're subscribed, you'll get the notification when that video drops. And it's an interview that you want to hear. So I want to throw that plug out there. I think that's everything, Mechee. Y'all make sure we check you out at the Black Agenda at a city near you.
Chicago. Y'all coming up soon. Y'all better get y'all tickets. We'll see Chicago in what, like 4 weeks?
Yep.
4 weeks. Denver in 2 weeks. Chicago, we see you in 4 weeks. So y'all better get
and Atlanta's coming up shortly after that. So if you in Chicago, if you in Atlanta, go get your stuff. I think early bird tickets are on sale still for most cities. So Chicago, I don't know. Chicago still has early bird. Y'all might be closing. Y'all might want to go run over there and check that quick. Especially y'all, Chicago kept asking us, when's the date? When's the date? When's the date? So we expect Chicago tickets to continue to fly off.
Chicago was on our head. They was on our head. When y'all coming to Chicago? Look.
Somebody said we pushed off DC, but it wasn't that. So let me just run that down real quick before we jump off. We didn't put off DC. What ended up happening was we tried to change as few dates as possible. And so you guys already know David Banner has so much going on. He's got quite a bit in his on his plate, and so we were working on dates that that fit and worked with him. And so we had to make some changes, but we wanted to change as few things as possible. So we tried to leave as many cities that were already there in place, you know, as we could. And so we ended up having to move around, in particular DC and Brooklyn. And so it wasn't because we were trying to put y'all off. We cannot wait to see y'all. So make sure that you head over there. And like I said, if you did get your ticket and you did not get an email, make sure you check your spam. You can hit me up directly at info@BBIProfessional.com, and I'll make sure that I respond back to you and get any of your questions answered. So
also too about the Black Agenda, some of the 2 dates that were changed, we also changed them due to other things. I want to say that was because there were other events going on that were major events that we didn't know about in first picking those dates that, you know, are going on with other major organizations that they do like annually. And so the one thing we are not here to do is compete with other people. The Black Agenda is taking people that are doing great things and helping to work with them to spread who they are, build more organizations across this nation and collaborate with them, right? So we're not reinventing the wheel. So one thing we don't want to do is a group of people that we are endorsing, that we think what they're doing is great. We don't want to be competing when they're doing the work that they're doing. So there was a very big event coming up in DC with the nation, and I guess that they do annually, and we didn't know that prior either. So that was a part of why we changed DC, because we you know, if we could be there, we would rather support and have y'all support that event, because as we have said before, the Black Agenda is about incorporating everybody. So the nation is working with us with security, like, you know, there are Hebrew Israelite brothers on this tour, there are Christians, there are non-Christians. We're not letting religion get in the way. So for the people that we, you know, rock with, our people, we don't want to come in and interfere in any way with what else is going on. So that's why we picked another day, because we didn't know that they had something else going on. So
all right, y'all. Well, thank you for tuning in, and make sure that you join Mechee here in about an hour. All right, peace.